Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at something that tries to do, well, what sounds pretty much impossible: judging history with math. We're going to dig into a framework that gives a score to leaders throughout the past, boiling down entire reigns into one single, pretty provocative number. I mean, think about it. Is that even possible? Can you really put a number on how much a nation's people loved or feared their ruler? Can you really quantify the good, the bad, and the truly ugly of a historical regime with a mathematical formula? Well, a document known as the RMK analysis says, yes, you absolutely can. It puts forward this incredibly detailed, almost obsessive set of rules and equations to create one standardized metric for judging, well, pretty much any leader in history.
In the whole thing, the entire system is built to generate one single number. It's called ABARISE DST. That's a mouthful, I know. It stands for the average probable popularity of a ruler among his subjects during that time. Basically, what it's trying to do is figure out what percentage of the population was, let's say, not against a leader or their regime.
Okay, so how on earth do you even start to calculate something like that? Well, the whole system is really powered by one fundamental and, frankly, kind of grim calculation. Let's look at the engine that drives this whole thing: the parish. So the first big piece of the puzzle is this thing called cumulative citizen mortality. And you got to pay attention here because the definition is really unusual. This is not the population size, no. Instead, the analysis wants us to estimate the total number of individual people who both lived and died, from any cause, by the way, during that whole period. It's a way of trying to capture the entire human story of an era, not just a single snapshot. All right. Once you have that massive number, you can then calculate what it calls the parish rate. The formula itself is actually pretty straightforward. You take the number of deaths that were caused by the regime, and you divide it by that cumulative citizen mortality number we just talked about. This single ratio, this is the system's core measurement for how lethal a regime was. And this is the absolute key to understanding the whole thing. The lower a regime's parish rate is, the better it scores in this system. Simple as that. The fewer people who died because of the regime's actions, the higher its final evaluation. This is the bedrock the entire analysis is built on.
Right, but history isn't just one number, is it? It's messy. It's complicated. So the RMK analysis tries to deal with that messiness by creating a whole bunch of very specific rules and subformulas. Let's see how it tries to handle all the tricky details.
For example, it tries to be really specific about who gets blamed for what. Take war. According to this model, a regime is only on the hook for deaths in what it calls a war of intention. Basically, a war it chose to start. Now, if it was a forced war where the country was just defending itself, well, those deaths don't count against its score. And get this, it even has a formula for something like corruption, which doesn't have an obvious body count. This formula literally turns stolen money into an equivalent number of deaths. And that number, that constant 80, well, the author of the analysis says it's based on their own research into global data connecting poverty and deaths from malnutrition. It's a really bold attempt to put a number on the human cost of graft. And it doesn't stop there. The system gets even more detailed, creating 5 different levels for corruption. It starts with just incidental stuff. Low-level acts. And from there, it climbs all the way up to kleptocracy, where the whole point of the government is just to make the rulers rich. And it ends in what it calls total state failure, which is just complete anarchy.
I mean, the ambition here is just staggering. The analysis lays out specific calculations for all kinds of unique situations. Like, think about a popular revolt that fails. The system actually has a rule to make sure the rebels don't get a worse score than the tyrant they were trying to overthrow. It even gets into the weeds trying to mathematically separate terrorism from insurgency. Seriously, every single one of these points has its own complicated formula behind it. It just shows you how deep this rabbit hole really goes.
So, after all of that, all these crazy calculations, what's the point? Well, here it is, the payoff, the APRST scorecard. This is the one number the whole system was designed to create. The final score is a number between 0 and 1, and it's meant to represent that percentage of the population that wasn't hostile.
Then, that score puts a leader into one of 6 buckets, ranging all the way from benevolent savior down to tyrannical genocidal. So if you're at the very top, you get a score of zero point 0.9 or higher. That's the benevolent savior category. We're talking about a liberator, a peacemaker, someone who inspires almost fanatical loyalty. Then you have the middle ground. A score from 0.5 to about 0.69 gets you a contentious status quo label. You know, this is your typical divided government, not a huge improvement, but not a whole lot worse either. And then there's the bottom, a score close to 0. This is labeled tyrannical/genocidal. The analysis basically calls this a complete and utter disaster for the people living under that regime. And to make it crystal clear what that lowest score means, the source has this really chilling line. It says, at that point, the idea of popularity is completely meaningless. The relationship is just predator and prey. And wow, that really just perfectly captures the whole goal of this thing, doesn't it? Whether you think it's brilliant or bonkers, the ambition is to take all the messiness, the complexity, the horror of history, and pin it all down to a single mathematical scale. So that leaves us with the big question, right? Is a formula for history a powerful new tool for analysis, something that lets us see the past in a new way? Or is it a dangerous oversimplification, one that just strips away all the human context and nuance in favor of a number on a spreadsheet? That is definitely something to chew on.